But first, pointing fingers, almost poking each other in the eye.
He'll negotiate with Iranians, he'll negotiate with Syrians, he'll negotiate with Russians, but he will not negotiate with Americans if they happen to be Republicans.
There is only one way when it comes to Harry Reid and Barack Obama. It's their way.
Republicans in Congress chose to shut down the federal government.
It is not the Republicans that shut down the government. It's Barack Obama and Harry Reid.
They demanded ransom just for doing their job.
Government is being held hostage. This government shutdown is a disgrace. It's a waste of the American people's time.
Stand up for your country. Stand up for America. Stand with us this evening and keep this government going.
This has to end.
If he wants to be King Barack Obama, then we might as well go home and then let him be king.
You own this. This is your shutdown. This represents an absolute failure of your leadership.
You won't be forced to choose between parks and cancer research or disease control.
We aren't going to let these World War II vets used as political pawns.
Harry Reid is responsible for the government shutdown. Harry Reid knows that Obamacare is bad for the country. It's the Democrats who shut down the government. It's the Democrats who want the government shut down.
So, who is to blame, and is there any way out of this mess? Karl Rove joins us. Nice to see you, Karl.
Great to see you.
So, who's to blame, and how do we get out of this mess?
Well, look, the first question is not as consequential as the second one. On the blame, the Republicans will get blamed more than the Democrats. A Pew poll had the Republicans being blamed by a 39-36 margin versus the Democrats. But compare that to 1995, where there was a 19-point disadvantage for the Republicans, not a 3-point disadvantage.
And why the difference, do you think?
I think a couple reasons. One is, the biggest one is that the president is more unpopular than Bill Clinton was. Bill Clinton was reasonably popular. He was seen as somebody who was trying to solve the problem. This president is a highly polarizing figure with negative ratings. Remember, when he came into office, more than 2 out of every 3 Americans said that they looked forward to him being somebody who would cooperate, negotiate, lead by bringing consensus. Less than half the American people believe that today. 40% of the people who believed that the president was going to be somebody who'd bring us together have now got a different opinion, and that's not strong.
Okay, so how do we get out of this mess?
Well, this is going to be the difficult part. I frankly, look, I don't understand why the president didn't take what the House got last night. I don't understand why Harry Reid didn't take what the House offered him last night.
Well, because now today they've basically bloodied the nose of the Republicans.
Well, yeah, but you know what? In politics, you always want to give your opponent an out. And if they'd done it last night, then they would have been able to say, look, we got the Republicans to finally come off of this defund thing. And sure, we gave them 2 things that are enormously popular. Remember, the 2 things that we've got here are, we've got the Republicans saying, you've given these corporations a $14 billion break by delaying the employer mandate for 1 year, the requirement that companies purchase insurance or pay a fine. I was having dinner tonight with John Barrasso, Senator Barrasso of Wyoming. He believes that the number is $15 billion is the cost of the individual mandate delay for a year. So the administration is saying, we'll give a break, $12 billion to corporate America, but we're not going to give a similar break to individuals and families, $15 billion. We're not going to do that. The second thing is that the administration and the Democrats are now defending the idea that we pass the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. It governs the entire country, but the president gives a carve-out, a special set of privileges to Congress. You get a special set of subsidies. You don't have to live under the law the rest of the country has to live under. Now, the first one is a better than 2-to-1 winner. Bloomberg did a poll last week. By a margin of 2-to-1, the American people favored giving the individual mandate a year's delay. I haven't seen testing on the second one. The Congress ought to live under the same laws the rest of the country does.
I can't imagine that one.
I bet it's a 9-to-1. I bet it's nearly, you would have members of Congress and their immediate families and staff and their families, and that's about it on the don't do that side. So the president could have taken these 2 winners. Now, instead, what he has done is he and the Democrats have given every Republican candidate, particularly in those battleground Senate states, a tool to say, you know what, Senator Kay Hagan, Senator Mary Landrieu, they voted, Senator Mark Pryor, Senator Begich in Alaska, all of them voted to protect this special privilege for congressmen. And they voted, while they supported the president in his action on giving a $12 billion break to corporations by delaying the employer mandate, They did. They wanted to put their hand in the pocket of American families to the tune of $15 billion by not allowing them to have a same-year delay that they're giving the companies.
You know, I think that the American people want a level playing field, and I think whatever reasons there are for any of these decisions by the president, it doesn't look fair when someone, and this is a Congress, passes a law and exempts themselves or gives them subsidy. That's the first thing. The second thing is the reason why the corporations and the unions got this waiver for a year is because they have lobbyists crawling all over this town, and they have power. And the small businessman, and I always go back to Appleton, Wisconsin, a small businessman who can't afford a lobbyist, who's got a small family business of less than 50 employees, you know, he or she can't afford, doesn't have access, doesn't have these special deals. That doesn't seem fair.
And now look, in the short run, the president's going to gain from this. But over the course of the next 14 months, what's going to happen is every candidate, Republican candidate, is going to be able to stand up and say, here's what the president was in favor of. You and I are in a different place, and that's
whatever happened to the little guy will be the ad.
Right. We stood up for the little guy.
Why did he give the advantage? What corporations mean? Why did they get the? What?
Because if he gave the year's delay, what happened is a lot of companies who might otherwise dump their employees into the exchanges, might have dumped their existing coverage, said, oh, let's hold on to it for one more year.
So are they going to do that in 1 year?
Sure.
So they're going to do that.
Sure,
the corporations. Why would the corporations not do it a year from now if they were going to do it now?
Well, because they were able to roll. A weird provision of law allows you to take your existing coverage and sign a contract now that carries it all the way into 2015. Rather than, even if your coverage, your health insurance coverage ends in March or April, you can sign a contract this year that will carry it into 2015. So these companies said, look, we don't want to, let's see what else is happening before we make this decision. We can keep our current policy and extend it until 2015. Let's do it. And the president said, I don't want a bunch of companies. I've already got too many companies dropping their coverage. We've seen it in the last week with a range of companies dropping their current retirees and spouses. And the president said, I don't want this politically in the midterm elections. Let's reduce the effect of companies dumping their coverage by giving the companies a year's delay.
Except every ad against every Democrat who's going to vote is that they care more about the lobbyists and the big business than they do the little guy.
There's a populist note that can be struck by Republican candidates next year. Now, remember, let's put this in an even bigger frame. The president's purpose in all of this is less to do with even Obamacare than it has to do with trying to gain the power over the budget resolution and in the debt ceiling fight to do two things. One is to dramatically increase federal spending. The House budget is at the level agreed to in July 2011 in the budget agreement. The Senate Democrat budget includes a trajectory to spend nearly $5 trillion more over the next 10 years, starting with nearly $100 billion this coming year. A trillion of that spending over the next decade would be offset by a trillion in new revenues, new taxes, but they want to dramatically increase the size of the federal government, and the president supports that. And the president wants to get in a place where in mid-November he's able to get a big deal that involves the balance of the fiscal year and the debt ceiling, where he gets a $1 trillion increase in the debt ceiling with no offsetting spending reductions and a dramatic increase in the budget for the balance of the year, and in essence a glide path that includes dramatically higher spending.
All right, Carl, let me ask you about something else, about something that happened today in Washington. A group of combat veterans refusing to let the shutdown stop their visit to the World War II memorial. Almost 200 veterans from Mississippi and Iowa passing by the barricades and security guards to keep their commitment to visit the memorial. Carl, your thoughts?
These men stormed Normandy, and these men won World War II. I wouldn't be standing in their way if I were anybody trying to keep them out of the World War II memorial. I thought it was interesting tonight. The House Republicans decided they were going to try this gambit of, let's go ahead and fund the Veterans Department, let's fund the Parks Department, the Interior Appropriations Bill, and let's provide the funding for the D.C. government. And they did it on the suspension calendar, which means they have to get 2/3 vote for each one of them. They got all Republicans and 33 Democrats to vote for veterans funding, but came up short of the 2/3 required for the suspension calendar. Came up 21 short on the parks, and came up 34 short on funding the D.C. government. Now, what's going to happen tomorrow when they're able to go through the normal procedure on Wednesday and pass a Wednesday or Thursday and pass a rule to take up these measures, bring them back up. They'll pass them through the House with significant number of Democrats and send them over to the Senate, and we'll have a second day where the Democrats will be looking like they're not trying to arrive at a reasonable solution to this. Now, I'm not suggesting this is going to be a political winner ultimately for the Republicans, but the Republicans are, I think, wisely taking this week to diminish the negative impact and to continue to add to this view, which the president himself has created, that he's not going to have any discussions whatsoever with the Congress, and he's not going to be talking to the Republicans. And Senator Reid has been saying, we're not going to even take up your bills. This is not going to be, this is going to make the Democrats look out of touch and intransigent and ugly.
You know, talking about out of touch and intransigent and ugly, when you look at those veterans who, as you say, did storm Normandy, World War II, I wonder, you know, when they think about what's going on Capitol Hill and that there's no sort of, you know, I mean, there's such an ugly war going on there that's just, it must look pretty petty to these men who risked everything and probably lost brothers and fathers and saw the worst. Yeah, it's just, I wonder what they think.
Yeah. There's an interesting speech given today on the floor of the Senate by Lamar Alexander. I think it's up on YouTube. People ought to take a look at it, where he basically you know, admonishes the president and Senator Reid for taking the attitude they've had. He said, look, our responsibility, the founders knew that there would be controversy. They knew there would be deep disagreements, and they created a system of government with checks and balances, and they expected us to try and resolve these in an orderly fashion. And you, Mr. President, doing what you're doing, and you, Senator Reid, doing what they're doing, are not helping bring about a resolution.
Except I think what the Democrats would say is that it's this, or the Tea Party element voting against them, that, you know, they say that, you know, the law was passed, whether it's unpopular or not, and that, you know, that you know, they would say the same argument back.
The history of our country is replete with laws that ultimately get removed from the books. That's not an unusual procedure.
I'm well aware of that. I'm just saying that their argument, that, see, many of the arguments that I hear is that you know, it's amazing how, you know, the other side makes the same arguments. So,
no. There's no argument possible here. The Republicans said, okay, we've made our position known. We will appoint conferees to sit down in a meeting with you to discuss this. And the Senate Democrats, led by Harry Reid, say we're going to table your motion, which means we're going to ignore the call to sit down and try and resolve this issue.
I think Senator Harry Reid, a former boxer, really does like to, you know, do a knockout punch.
You know what?
And it's not very effective. It's not being a leader. It may be a good fighter, but it's not being a leader.
I think I know he's a former boxer. I'd have a slightly different view. I think he's been hit too many times. This was a stupid move on his part. He should have said, okay, fine, let's sit down and come to an agreement. The American people want a practical resolution of this problem, and in order to get a practical resolution, you do not act like a schoolyard bully like Harry Reid is.
I wish that they could sort of rise above the bad blood and sort of step back and take a deep breath. But anyway, let me ask you about something else. Today was the launch of the Obamacare exchanges, and Carl, you tweeted what? People having problems signing up for Obamacare this AM? Retweet if you are not surprised.
Look, I had an interesting meeting last week with an executive of a major healthcare company who said basically, we are deeply concerned they're not going to be able to, we have no evidence that they can accurately forecast what the premiums are. So people are signing up based on a premium, and in all likelihood, the premium that they're getting quoted is less than the premium they're going to be charged.
But I thought a deal's a deal. I mean, aren't they making contracts with them? I mean, those can actually, when you sign up for a certain price, they can raise it on you?
No, because it's going to be mistaken. The government software is not generating the true price. And remember, if it's low, it's also creating a difficulty, because if it's too high, it's one problem. If it's too low, it's another problem. It has to be accurate. Otherwise, people are not going to be making an informed decision. We have states, including Colorado and Oregon, where you can go on and look at your options, but you can't sign up online. We have states where, virtually every state, where you don't have, where they're going to take your application online and then print it off. The government awarded a $1.2 billion contract to a company here in Washington, D.C. to take the printed applications and get them entered into a system that allows you to check for eligibility.
Who got that contract?
But they're celebrating in that corporate headquarters.
Who got that contract? I mean, like, who got that contract?
I'd never heard of the name of the company before. It doesn't mean that it isn't a big company, but it's $1.2 billion.
All right, you know what I can't, okay, yours is $1.2 billion. You know what I don't understand is that the government gave the IRS, I don't know how many hundreds of millions to help roll out this tax for Obamacare. They've lost $67
misplaced.
million misplaced.
Yeah.
And so now we're supposed to give them more money to do whatever
Right.
they're supposed to do. They can't even hang on to $67 million. Where is it? I mean, at least come up with explain the $67 million before you ask for more.
And it isn't funny that the auditors and accountants at the IRS can't tell you where that money went. Look, it's replete with this. There's a technical thing called the data hub, and this hub is supposed to collect from all of these sources, these individual state exchanges and the federally run exchanges, these applications, and check them against databases. Are you a U.S. citizen? Homeland Security. Are you, are you employed? Various databases. What's your income level? IRS and so forth. That data hub does not work yet, and they've had 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2013 until the 1st of October to get it up and running.
Have you ever tried to get a driver's license? I would be so surprised.
In Texas, it takes not much time. In the District of Columbia, it takes forever.
Anyway, Carl, always nice to see you.
Great, thank you.